Right now, I want to mention the fact that the month of March is Women's History Month. And during this month, we have the opportunity to acknowledge the historical achievements and contributions women have made in the United States. And remembering those who paved the way in the struggle for gender equality. Remembering those who were and are history makers. Remembering those who were and are barrier breakers. And you know, it really wasn't that long ago that women had to seize control of the direction of their lives, of their rights. And I say seize because achievements women have made throughout our history have not always been willingly or freely given. Some of you probably remember that. Women had to seize the right to be considered equal, autonomous citizens, and not just property or under the control or influence of their fathers or husbands. According to my research, women started demanding their rights for equality around 1848. And some of those demands were, and I want you to hear this, because this sounds so far-fetched to someone that's younger. The right to be equal citizens and own property in their own name. The right to inheritance, to make a will or enter a contract. The right to divorce. The right to vote, which was passed in 1920, but minority women still had difficulty voting well into the 1960s. The right to work. Now, some women always worked, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. The right to run for public office or even serve on a jury. The right to have ownership over your own wages. The right to equal pay, which we still haven't quite achieved. The right to open a bank account and have a credit card without the permission of a husband. Now, there's exceptions to these because there have been powerful women who knew what they were and they seized the opportunity. But these and more, many, many more women did not have that power. And more rights were denied women for hundreds of years in our country. And some women around the world still to this day do not have those rights. Even today, there are rights that women have achieved that have been recently taken away, such as the overturning of Roe v. Wade in 2022. Now, no matter where you stand on those rights, that's not the point. Now, there's been several laws passed since 1848, granting women more and more equality. And I want to mention some of the courageous women that fought for equality, like Lucy Stone, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, Ida B. Wells Barnett, Zetka Lassa, who was a Chippewa native, Fannie Lou Hamer, Mary Church Terrell, Coretta Scott King. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, just to name a few. So Women's History Month, like all the other history months, help serve as a reminder for the need of continued awareness that the rights we have today have not always been the case. The History Months stand as a reminder to stay vigilant because even now there are those that wish to strip away the advancement these groups have made towards equality. Women had to seize the day. They had to seize the months. They had to seize the years that they had to demand and claim the right to be treated equally, fairly. They had to declare that there's no turning back to yesteryears. They seized every opportunity to move forward and grasp this thing called life and to take charge of who they truly are. as divine expressions of spirit. Now, you might ask, Reverend Jean, why is this so important to talk about in a spiritual community? Well, our founder, Ernest Holmes, wrote in The Science of Mind, the divine plan is one of freedom. Bondage is not God ordained. Freedom is the birthright of every soul. All instinctively know this. The truth points to freedom under law. Thus, the inherent nature of humanity is forever seeking to express itself in the terms of freedom. Did you hear that? Bondage is not God ordained. Oppression is not God ordained. Subjugation is not God ordained. That's why the accomplishments of these women are so important. That's why everyone should know about this philosophy, because it's a philosophy of liberation. Liberation of the mind, body, and spirit. They were women of faith. They had faith in a power that was greater than they were, and they recognized within themselves that they were worthy of a better way of life, that they were worthy of freedom. And because they innately knew this, they continued through history to seize their freedom regardless of what society said about how a woman should behave, regardless of what the clergy of that day said. Regardless of any paradigm that they were faced with, they knew of a greater truth about who they were, and they had faith in that innate truth. So, against insurmountable odds, they protested. They wrote the so-called legal authorities of their day. They gave speeches. They were thrown in jail. They recruited male allies. They trusted in the power within them that was greater than they were, to guide them, to give them strength and courage in the face of hostile forces that wanted to push them back down into the subservient positions that they were no longer willing to accept. They had faith to move forward and seize a new day, and they knew there was no turning back. The month we are highlighting, this month, we are going to highlight women of spiritual power. And today I want to pay tribute to a woman that seized her freedom. A woman that they knew, she knew that there was no turning back. She seized control over her own life. She was facing an incurable disease, blatant, irrational racism, sexism. This woman was both a history maker and a barrier breaker. A woman who not only prevailed, but seized the opportunity to become a great spiritual leader in the New Thought movement. In her own words, she said, to teach people how to live better lives. The woman I'm talking about is the late, great Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman, founder and minister of Christ Universal Temple. I'm going to tell you a little bit backstory if you don't know who she is. She came from a modest home, very religious parents, and she excelled in everything that she did. In school, she became a teacher, she became a quartermaster, analyst, and then one day in the 1950s, her doctor called her, and he said, Johnny, I have done everything that I could for you. But I have to tell you, the diagnosis that I shared with you, I can't help you anymore. The prognosis is that you only have 6 months to live. Now, when Johnny heard this, she was stunned. She was hurt. She was filled with fear, even guilt. And she thought to herself, doesn't he know that I have my whole life before me? That I have my whole life to give? Why is he giving up on me? She didn't know what to do, but she knew that she was not ready to die. And one morning as she sat in her living room, hoping the conversation was just some kind of bad dream, a little booklet fell off the coffee table. Now, this booklet has always been on the coffee table because her mother subscribed to a particular place. And they would get these booklets, and her mother would place it on the coffee table in hoping that her daughter would see it and pick it up. But Johnny said she ignored the little book. And so as she absentmindedly just went to pick the book up, she saw the title, and it caught her attention. And it was 8 words. 8 words. And the words were, God is your health. You can't be sick. She was stunned, and she said, who are these people that would have the audacity to claim such a thing, that they would print such a thing? Don't they know that I'm dealing with a death issue here? How could they be so bold? Her mother quickly seized the opportunity and told her who these people were. And she encouraged her daughter to go to Unity Village in Lee Summit, Missouri. She encouraged her to go and learn about the spiritual healing principles that they taught there. And she did because she knew she had nothing to lose. So, in 1952, Johnny became the first African-American student at Unity Village. But she was faced with the barrier of segregation. Johnny had to stay at a YWCA and commute to Unity Village. And sometimes she was late. And then her teachers would get angry with her and reprimand her. And she threatened to quit. But her fellow students, all Caucasians, stood behind her, and they complained, and management changed, and they found a cottage that used to belong to workers, and they converted that cottage so that Johnny could stay there on campus. Now, even the paradigm of segregation, because she wasn't allowed to stay with her other fellow students. But even the paradigm of segregation did not stop Johnny from seizing the opportunity to glean the ancient wisdom and new thought theology taught at Unity Village. And she brought this teaching to her community so that they, too, can learn about their divinity. She said, make sure. She said, I learned about the law of creation and that it works for me every time, on time. My only task is to apply it to my daily life. In 1956, Reverend Johnny received Unity Teaching Certificate and became an ordained Unity minister. The Unity philosophy is a New Thought philosophy, which was founded in 1889 by Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. From there, Reverend Johnny went on to build a powerful spiritual community and founded a progressive New Thought church, the Church Unity Temple, with nearly 20,000 members. And when the congregation outgrew their structure, she designed, constructed, and moved into the current Christ Universal Temple on a 100-acre campus in Chicago, Illinois. Such was the power of Reverend Johnnie Colemon. She went on to build several other structures of learning to spread the philosophy she developed called Better Living Teaching, which included the Johnnie Colemon Institute and the Johnnie Colemon Academy. You know, that's funny, I said Johnnie Cochran. I am a gigantic Star Trek fan, and if any of you know anything about Star Trek, you would know who Johnnie Cochran is. But I'll leave that alone. Reverend Johnnie knew the divine plan was one of freedom, and that's why she took the New Thought philosophy to her community. She knew of the power that the collective consciousness had on her community. And she said that I have dedicated my life to instructing people, to watch your words, watch your thoughts, watch your actions, watch your reactions, and watch your feelings. You are a powerhouse, and you don't realize it. You might ask, what was her superpower? Faith. Her superpower was faith. She said that faith sees, faith knows. Faith is more than an idle hoping or believing. Faith knows the truth that God's outpouring of itself is irrepressible, infinite, and absolute. When you are consciously aware of this, your faith grows courageously and trusts God to get the best out of the worst. Faith is your spiritual fingers. It reaches into the spiritual realm and lifts your eyes above all material things and points to spirit as the source of all. Just like all the women of faith that seized their freedom for all women, Reverend Johnnie, too, was a woman of faith, and she put her faith into action and helped many people find a new approach to life. A new approach to life, to a philosophy she coined better living. She was a mentor to the late, great Bishop Barbara Lewis King of Hillside International Truth Center. And she encouraged her to accept the calling that was within her. You know, we have a great deal to thank Reverend Johnnie Colemon for. She taught us that it works if you work it, and that the principle of life resides in our soul, ready, willing, and able to respond to our command. But we must activate its potential. And although she passed away on December 23rd, 2014, at the age of 94, her impact, influence, and legacy lives on through her teaching of New Thought truths. So I want to invite you today to be bold like Reverend Johnnie and seize control over your own life through New Thought teachings. And remember her words, it works if you work it.